My name is Paul Marquis. I'm the Energy and Sustainability Manager for the City of Salem. How many folks here just got back from the tour of the new Allied Health Facility? No one? You're going to go on the next one, I suppose. All right, make sure you do. Please make sure you do. The facility is fantastic. I toured it a few weeks ago, and you know, when you're talking about trying to get an institution, a company, an organization to go green, something like that is a really good starting point. It's a flagship of sustainability, I would say. So please make it a point to go on the tour. You know, there are many facets of this that can be adapted throughout the way we do business now. And you know, I don't think anyone would argue that we're heading down a path that is potentially not sustainable. You know, we have cities and towns around the country that are creating positions like my own because they recognize the importance of changing the way we do things. The previous speaker talked about green jobs. That is something that you folks might be thinking about. I don't know if you're studying here at NSCC, if you're students here, but it's certainly something to give consideration to as you try to decide what careers you're going to embark on. The gentleman right before I started asked me about opportunities in the green sector, which is one of the reasons I bring it up. So hopefully buildings like the Allied Health Building will inspire you to perhaps move in that direction. You know, when you're looking at a building like that, there are a few things that jump out at you. First off, it's going to reduce the environmental footprint of that building. I mean, that's obvious. That's the purpose of it. But more importantly, I think it represents an opportunity to kind of move toward this culture of sustainability that I'm going to talk about today. You know, if we're going to change the way we do business, the way we do things in general, we really have to look at mindset. We have to look at, you know, how we think about things in general. And I think things like the Allied Health Building are a great starting point for that. Before I dig deeper, though, you know, I think it's worthwhile to talk about terminology. We've got green, we've got sustainability, often used interchangeably, and in fact, I would maintain that they're not. You know, when we talk about green, you know, we talk about natural things, we talk about things that are, you know, easily recyclable, that are not going to leave a nasty waste stream or something like that. But it's deeper than that. You know, you can argue that, well, a tree grows something that is made from wood is green, and that's not necessarily the case. It might be green, it may not be sustainable. And, you know, an example of that is you may have trees that are harvested unsustainably from a forest. In other words, they're being harvested from the forest at a much greater rate than they're regrowing. So you've got something that's potentially green but not sustainable. Another example might be a green cleaner, green in quotes, that may not produce any toxic emissions. It may be biodegradable to the point that you can toss it down the sink when you're done with it. But if it's made from components that can't be easily regenerated, then it's probably not sustainable. So definition of sustainability that a lot of folks like myself in the field like to use is based on this thing called the wingspread statement. It was based on a study, I believe, at the UN several years ago. And that's development that provides for the needs of the present without compromising the ability of those in the future to meet their own needs. You know, it continually amazes me. You've got, you know, folks against the green movement, and it, you know, it has me scratching my head. Why would this be the case? You know, if you think about it, all of this is a matter of simple physics and economics. We're all living on this block floating through space, and there's only so much stuff here, and we're using it up at an unsustainable rate. So it's common sense that we need to think differently about the way we do things. You know, so that's why I think it's important to get people to change their mindset, to shift toward this culture of sustainability. And as the Energy and Sustainability Manager for the City of Salem, I and the Mayor are trying to move the whole city in this direction. All right, and you know, I'm sure many of you have heard the term greenwashing. Greenwashing, in essence, is paying lip service to the whole idea of green or sustainable. And, you know, perhaps adopting one strategy, maybe you put in energy-efficient equipment, you call it a day, you call yourself green. That's not necessarily the case. Maybe you have a product that has green elements in it, but it's really, really nasty if you dump it into the waste stream. You know, you'll have the vinyl industry, for instance, saying, well, their product is recyclable, so it's green. Well, in fact, the process of making the vinyl in the first place and the process of reprocessing it, if you do recycle it, is so nasty that it really can't, by most standards, be considered green. And you know, one of the challenges right now, particularly for someone like me as the energy manager for a city like Salem, is that you know, we're in tough economic times right now. We're dealing with limited resources. So we have to figure out ways to demonstrate the value in green to residents, to business owners, and everybody else in Salem, or a city like it, you know, if you're my counterpart somewhere else. So that's one of the challenges, and you know, there are ways of addressing those challenges. There is some value in green. There is inherent value in green. The facility across the way that we're going to be touring, the Allied Health Building, was built to LEED standards. Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design is what LEED stands for. It's sponsored by the U.S. Green Building Council. It really represents a complete new way of doing things, and in doing so, will help to, I think, affect this mindset change that I'm talking about. But, you know, on a more immediate level, it saves on energy, which means you're spending less money on energy. Saves water, which means you're spending much less money on water. And it allows you to manage resources in a more sustainable way. So, you know, aside from the fact that generally you end up with a much healthier building, something that's much more friendly to the environment. So you've got the primary benefits when you're looking at it from an economic standpoint, and then the secondary benefits too. You know, another challenge is just getting people to come along for the ride, making sure they understand why this is important, why we all need to get in this together. All right, so, you know, in sustainability circles, we talk people, planet, prosperity, the triple bottom line. And, you know, the bottom line for me in my position is this stuff doesn't work. And that's part of the prosperity piece. Doesn't work if it doesn't work economically. And it's been demonstrated time and time again that green really does work economically if you do it right. In the case of buildings like the Allied Health Building, it was fairly expensive to build this in the first place, but it's going to save so much money and energy, water, etc. over its lifespan that it's going to be a good value. You know, they'll get back more than enough in terms of savings than they spent on extra costs to turn it into a green facility in the first place. All right, so, you know, we've got the direct benefits I already talked about, dollar savings, obviously in a municipality like Salem, cash-strapped municipality, you save money, you can divert that into other things. You know, saving teachers' jobs, for instance. We get the greenhouse gas reduction, so if you're looking at this in terms of what's for the greater good, we've got those emissions reductions associated with energy savings. And then, you know, the previous speaker spoke of job development. You know, there is a growing green job sector here in the United States, and it's going through fits and starts, but it's an immature industry, and it will grow. I think you can be fairly certain of that. You know, I feel like we've kind of reached a critical mass where we are at a point where the whole green movement is self-sustaining. You know, and the jobs will be there. They may not be there right now, but they will be there. But you know, going back again to something the previous speaker said, he was talking about the fact that, you know, we're subsidizing a fossil fuel economy. And, you know, it really, you know, he spoke with some chagrin about that. And, you know, I gotta say, it really chagrins me. I think we need to take our politicians to task on this whole issue. You've got a fairly large number of politicians at the national level that want to maintain the status quo, keep the money in the fossil fuel industry, you know, maintain the tax subsidies for the fossil fuel industry. And this is supposedly on the promise of jobs. You know, we hold the line of taxes, they're going to create jobs. Well, the question you have to ask the politician is, where are those jobs? They're failing to materialize. They're also complaining in this camp, the fossil fuel party, as I've started to call it, and I don't want to get on the soapbox too much here, but you know, they're saying, well, the clean energy sector, the green jobs, don't come unless we subsidize the industry. Well, we are subsidizing the fossil fuel industry right now, and giving them tax breaks and all that. And I maintain you just tell your politicians that we want fair treatment for the clean energy sector, which, by the way, is a much less mature sector, so we really need to give it that extra little boost at the start to get it moving, much like we did with the fossil fuel industry. So ultimately, we'll have job development, market development. You know, if we succeed, then we're going to develop new markets for a lot of projects, and the jobs will come. And then, you know, at a more immediate level for me, for the city of Salem, we get this cachet associated with green. You know, the buzz that you get that goes along with green. And you know, that really, I think, makes a city, if somebody's looking at buying a home somewhere, it really makes a city a more desirable place to live. Maintains property values, hopefully without locking people out, you know, without gentrifying that city or town. But it can really allow a city to kind of maintain good value even in the face of bad economic times. And then, you know, Salem is a tourist city, to be sure. Everybody's aware of that. Some of you are probably heading over for Halloween to get involved in some of the madness there. But it really is a tourist city, and you know, green could really enhance Salem's image as a tourist destination. So how do we do it? How do we get there? You know, I believe it's going to be a combination of education, regulation, and market forces. I rail against the idea that market forces alone will get us there, as some would like us to believe. I rail against the idea that we don't need regulation. We really need all three of these to make sure we can get there. We really need to engage all sectors, and you know, one of the ways to do that is with a diversity program. So by all sectors, I mean public, private, and so on. You know, businesses, residents. We need to get into the schools and you know, hit as many areas as we possibly can. The city really needs to lead by example, by walking the walk. You know, we can't just say, "Oh, this is what you should do." We really need to offer some examples. We need to implement programs citywide that will provide examples to businesses and to residents. Looking for opportunity in less obvious places. This is really important, especially in the light of strained budgets. And a great example of this in Salem is the mayor of Salem, when she was elected, charged the school facilities director with reducing energy consumption in the schools. And she wanted him to do it in a big way. But she didn't give him money to do it. You know, one thing most managers really can't stand is what's called the unfunded mandate. You need to do this, but you need to do it without any kind of budget to implement it. So the facilities director got creative, and through behavior programs and making sure his facility staff understood what the set points for thermostats should be, you know, where they needed to maintain the equipment in terms of how hot or how cold things should be, he was able to get the energy consumption in the schools down by 25 to 30%. It's not the type of thing that typically someone in my shoes goes to first. You know, we're looking at putting in new heating and cooling equipment, energy efficient lighting, things like that. But you know, sometimes it's the simple things. You know, making sure people know that they should turn off lights when they're finished with the room, things like that. That can affect big changes. There are some companies now that specialize in this. They'll come in and they'll tell you how to reduce your energy consumption and guarantee it, you know, 10% energy savings or something like that, strictly through behavior modification. So no first outlay in cash whatsoever. We want to integrate programs where possible and leveraging resources. simply means pooling your resources to get something bigger done. And a great example of this in Salem is we have the Green Salem Business Challenge. So we brought together the Salem Chamber of Commerce and our recycling committee and myself and a few other groups in town to put our resources together to try to engage private sector, try to engage businesses to move in a green direction. I have two of the same folder there, sorry about that. And then, using an incremental approach. You don't want to shove this stuff down people's throats. It's just not going to work. It can be argued by some that we really need to make big changes fast, and I agree with that. But if people reject those changes outright, we're not going to get anything done. So I maintain that you start with an incremental approach, start a little bit slowly, and then ramp things up quickly at a certain point. So we're trying to take some of those baby steps in Salem through various programs, and hopefully we'll get there. We'll get people to kind of think about things on their own at a certain point, so they'll be their own motivation. We don't have to try to motivate them. Education is critical. One great thing about this facility right here is its educational value. This is not only a laboratory for health sciences, it's actually a laboratory for sustainability. It really is. I mean, this is, hopefully, it's my understanding that it is the plan of North Shore Community College to use this as part of the basis for sustainability program. So, I look at this as providing great bang for the buck in that respect, because it's providing that curriculum opportunity. In Salem, we're doing a K-12 green curriculum program. We're trying to develop a green curriculum. We're starting off slowly, but we've now got a framework for providing that curricula to the teachers, and that will really take off. That from the start, when we're paying teachers to create the lesson plans, we're hoping ultimately that they'll take it upon themselves to do the lesson plans themselves and just voluntarily put some new lesson plans into the system. And then, I think it really helps to start with some iconic projects, some shining examples, if you will, of how you can do things to kind of get the ball rolling. And there are a number of ways of doing that, a number of approaches you might take. And again, the Allied Health Building is a great example of that. That really is an iconic project for North Shore Community College. It's the state's first state-owned zero net energy building. By zero net energy, it means that the building is energy neutral. It may at times use more energy than it produces, but at times it's going to produce more energy than it needs, and on balance, it's going to be energy neutral. And it's the first state-owned building of its type. So it represents, this idea of an iconic project, and will hopefully beget other projects like it. Salem, when you look at the whole idea of, education, regulation, and so on, we need to attack this from different angles. We have the benefit of the Green Communities Program, which is a state program, and at the heart of the states recently being made the most energy efficient in the country by the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, which is a very well-respected organization. At the root of that is this Green Communities Program. A lot of municipal leaders like to look at it as a grant program. It's much more than that. Our carrot is a grant. They're saying, you do these things, you become a green community, and we're going to give you some money. And the first grant round, Salem received about $250,000, which, in an economy like this is really a big help if we're trying to, move these energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. There were 5 things we had to do to become a green community. We had to adopt a 5-year energy plan where we reduced energy consumption in the city by 20% over a 5-year period. We had to adopt the stretch code, which in simple terms basically means a building energy code on steroids. So bringing the energy code to a new standard, basically, a higher standard. So we did adopt that in Salem, it's now in force. There's by right siting of renewable energy projects, which means basically you can't impose too onerous a process for doing renewable energy projects. So that's the simplified version of what by right siting means. And by the same token, you need to streamline the permitting process. So, you can't, for instance, ask somebody to wait more than 6 months for permit for one of these projects. As it stands in Salem, it was originally about 30 days anyway, so there was no problem for us there. And then we needed to adopt a fuel-efficient vehicle policy. These have really helped in a big way, I think. They're having to adopt these. On the energy plan piece alone, you really have a tough time reducing energy consumption if you don't know what your energy consumption is. And in many cities and towns, they frankly have no idea. That's kind of a department by department thing. And for green communities, we've kind of had to bring all that data together so we have a much more complete picture of the overall energy use in the city. Across all areas, it's not just buildings, it's also street lights, traffic lights, vehicles, etc. And so that's really helped us to kind of focus our efforts. Now I talk about iconic projects. One potentially iconic project that we could implement in Salem is a community scale wind turbine. If any of you were attuned to some of the buzz in the media, you probably know that this has been somewhat controversial at the start. A lot of folks in Salem Port, a lot against. We're proposing it for a public park. A lot of folks object to that idea. But many are saying, we need this sort of thing. You can see this is actually obviously a depiction of what it would look like. And I like this shot because it shows it side by side with our coal-fired power plant, which will be going offline pretty soon, thankfully. I say thankfully from a pollution and a resource perspective, but at the same time, there's a downside because we're going to lose a big chunk of our tax revenue. So we have to figure out ways to replace some of that revenue. And many of us in town believe that a wind turbine would be a good way to do that. Hardly a slam dunk. This whole thing underscores one of the challenges of getting stuff done in the municipality, in that you have to develop broad consensus sometimes for some of these projects. And there's certainly no exception in this case. Some other projects we're doing, this actually is a Green Communities funded project. We updated all of the street lights in our downtown area with LED technology. So we've got, of our 400 or so city-owned street lights downtown, 375 of them now sport LED technology, which uses roughly a quarter of the energy that the original lamps used. We did our big ribbon cutting. I love the giant lights, which Sylvania, you may have guessed, is the supplier of those LED lights. And so we did our little ribbon cutting ceremony a few months ago. This program is particularly exciting to me. When you're talking about trying to address multiple sectors and getting people on board, I like this because it reaches a lot of people. It reaches the average person. We've got this weatherization program that's essentially volunteer-based, and we're hoping to get people out and get their hands dirty and learn some weatherization skills. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this HEAT program in Cambridge, Home Energy Efficiency Training Program. It's a program that was one of the first of its kind in the area here, and the core of the model is use volunteer labor, get people out with caulking guns that they've never used them before, perhaps. Teach them some weatherization skills while they weatherize a single home, and then they can take those skills and apply them somewhere else. The program's been a little bit slow to get off the ground for logistical reasons, but it's still alive and kicking. We thought it would be appropriate to name it the Eco Team, given that it's based in Salem, and it stands for Energy Efficiency Knockout. And ECO, of course, has a double entendre. So aside from the energy and water savings, there's a green green collar job training component, so we're hoping to teach people skills. And there's ideally a multiplier effect in that folks that show up, volunteers that show up, will take those skills back to their own homes. And they'll talk to their friends and neighbors about it. And by the way, the very first project we did under this framework, we were able to complete with more volunteers than we could possibly use because of all of the students from North Shore Community College who came out to help us out. It was a fantastic day. We had 35 plus volunteers for a relatively small home. It was a little bit of a challenge managing everybody, but Greg Rapucci, one of your instructors in the is it the corporate? I always get the name. All right, so Greg Rapucci, but he teaches a sustainability class, doesn't he? Yeah. So he told the students you get extra credit if you come out to do one of these barn raises, and so it worked out fabulously well. Similarly diverse, we've got this bike share program. You know, we're not all about just installing HVAC equipment and, you know, improving energy efficiency. We recently started Salem Spins. We've got 2 hubs, one at the university, one downtown, 10 bikes at each hub. We're really excited about it. Hopefully we can sustain it. You know, it's difficult with a shoestring budget. We had a very small piece of our grant available for this program. But again, we're hoping through volunteers and corporate sponsorship and whatnot, we can keep the program going. Ultimately, we want to use it to tie South Salem to the urban core with hubs at the T station and the Salem Ferry. It's really low tech. We actually have student staffers managing the checkout at the Salem State end of things, and we have hotel desk staff maintaining the checkout services at the downtown lounge. So, you know, our big effort to engage the private sector has been this Green Salem Business Challenge, which we started last year. It's enjoyed great success so far. And it's basically a self-reporting program. Businesses will go through an online report card of everything they've done. They'll report on what they plan to do. And, you know, we recognize them in the public ceremony for those who are doing the best. And, you know, again, we've gotten great participation. Around 90 businesses and organizations have participated so far. And, you know, one of the values the business gets from this, aside from the obvious savings of energy and water, is they get the buzz of calling themselves a green business. And, you know, savvy consumers, as you're probably aware, are now demanding green from businesses that they patronize. And, you know, another benefit, a secondary benefit, is we've seen an improvement in recycling rates. Our recycling committee was involved in this project, and that was one of their goals. And we get out the word, and apparently a lot of business owners were completely unaware that in the downtown core, we were offering free recycling to businesses, free recycling pickup, whereas ordinarily businesses have to pay for that. So that, of course, helped to improve recycling rates. All right, other local developments. We're working on a master plan for sustainability, a climate action plan, as it's called in most places. So you really, you know, to move all these things forward well, you really have to have a good plan, like anything else, like any kind of project. Our historic commission recently adopted solar guidelines. Salem is a very historic community, as I'm sure you know, and we had homeowners asking us about putting solar panels on them. And the simple answer at the start was, you can't do it. You're living in a historic district or whatever, and it's just, it's inappropriate for a historic district. But recognizing that this is important now, it's going to become more important, the commission decided to adopt these solar guidelines, allowing solar installations on historic homes in the downtown area. We are revising a wind ordinance in town to make it easier for homeowners to put in small wind systems. We've got a grant for electric vehicle charging stations. And I'd like to tie this to the idea of photovoltaics, solar electric panels for our municipal rooftops, particularly with parking garages. Then we get to boast carbon-free transportation in the city. And by the way, the charging stations, once they're installed, will be free. So if you're contemplating the purchase of an electric vehicle, you can come to Salem and fuel up for free. Another thing we did recently, we installed our first solar-powered street light at Salem High School. And many of you have probably seen these big belly solar trash compactors around town if you've been in Salem, and those have turned out to be enormously successful. So, you know, ultimately, I think we'd like to go the route that North Shore Community College did as an institution in trying to move sustainability forward and try to, you know, produce our own flagship structure, our own LEED facility. There's nothing in the plans right now, but we have some projects that we'll be getting underway pretty soon, and hopefully we'll be able to look at LEED for those buildings. This is the new standard for buildings. It's required among all new state buildings, but in the case of this building over here, they achieved one of the highest standards. It really is sweeping the nation, you know, Austin, Boston, Chicago, New York, Minneapolis, a pile of other places really embraced the whole LEED standard. And it's actually codified in Boston in Article 37, which requires all new buildings, public or private, residential or commercial, 50,000 square feet or greater, to be built to LEED standards. They don't have to be certified, but they have to be built to LEED standards. I'm hoping we can move in a similar direction here in Salem, and codify it perhaps in Salem, make a requirement that all new buildings, all new rehab projects meet LEED standards. And so on to the Allied Health building here. You know, you got the tour coming up. As I mentioned, it's LEED Gold, first zero net energy state-owned building. Credit, you know, North Shore Community College, the State Division of Capital Asset Management, and the architect, Camilla Schaefer, for putting together this project. You know, the proof is in the pudding. You know, we'll see how things go in a few years in terms of reduction in operating expense, but I think it's going to do well. It incorporates improved technologies, green roof, photovoltaic, ground source heat pump, which is a geothermal technology, on-site stormwater management, and the next speaker is actually going to talk about the ground source heat pump, so you might want to come back for that presentation. Natural daylighting and so on. So he'll tell you about all these things during the tour. I'm going to wrap it up here, and hope I didn't take too long. But the tour is leaving now, so go. Thank you.